The emergency beacon pulsed like a dying heartbeat against the vast emptiness of space. James Harrison watched it blink on his ship's console, its steady rhythm matching the doubts that crept through his mind. After 15 years of deep space salvage operations, he'd learned that rescue beacons usually meant one of two things: a genuine cry for help or a trap. The trouble was figuring out which before it was too late. "Computer, analyze signal pattern," he commanded, running his fingers through his graying hair. The isolation of space had aged him prematurely, but his keen instincts remained sharp as ever. Signal originates from Research Station Omega-7, abandoned 3 years ago following unexplained incidents. Pattern matches standard emergency protocols but contains unknown subsignals. James leaned forward, interest piqued. Omega-7 had been one of the most advanced research stations in the Outer Rim before its mysterious shutdown. The official story cited equipment malfunction, but rumors spoke of disappearances and strange phenomena that the corporation had covered up. "Any life signs?" he asked, already knowing he would investigate regardless of the answer. Curiosity had always been his weakness. "One life form detected. Species unknown." The words hung in the recycled air of his cockpit. Unknown species weren't uncommon in the vastness of space, but finding one on an abandoned human station raised red flags. Still, the salvage rights alone would be worth the risk. His ship, the Star Weaver, glided toward the station with practiced precision. As he approached, the station's skeletal frame emerged from the darkness, its solar panels reflecting distant starlight like broken glass. The main docking bay stood open, a dark maw waiting to swallow him whole. James cycled through his pre-boarding checklist with mechanical efficiency, but his mind wandered to the stories he'd heard about Omega-7. Some said the researchers had discovered something they shouldn't have, while others claimed they'd made contact with an intelligence beyond human comprehension. The airlock hissed as he stepped into the station, his magnetic boots clicking against the metal floor. Emergency lights cast long shadows through the corridors, and the air tasted stale despite his suit's filtration system. "Hello," he called out over his suit's external speakers. "This is James Harrison, responding to your distress signal. Is anyone there?" The silence that followed was broken only by the soft hum of auxiliary power systems. He moved deeper into the station, passing abandoned research terminals and personal effects left behind during the evacuation. A coffee mug still sat on a desk, its contents long since dried to a dark stain. Then he heard it, a sound like silk sliding across metal, followed by a voice that seemed to bypass his ears and speak directly to his mind. "I was beginning to think no one would come." James spun around, his hand instinctively reaching for his plasma cutter. In the doorway stood a figure that challenged everything he thought he knew about alien life. She, and somehow he knew it was a she, had an almost human form, but her skin shimmered with an iridescent quality that shifted colors in the emergency lighting. Her eyes were the deep purple of distant nebulae, and they fixed on him with an intensity that made his breath catch. "I am Zara," she said, her voice carrying the same melodic quality that had first caught his attention. "Thank you for answering my call." James found himself lowering his weapon, though every year of experience screamed at him to keep it ready. "You sent the distress signal? What happened here? Where's the station's crew?" Zara moved closer, her movements liquid smooth. So many questions. Humans are always so curious. She smiled, revealing teeth that were just a bit too sharp to be comfortable. "The crew? They left long ago, leaving me trapped here when my ship's core malfunctioned. I've been waiting for someone with the technical expertise to help me repair it." "You've been here alone for 3 years?" James asked, skepticism evident in his voice. "My species has different needs than humans," she replied, moving to a nearby console and activating it with a touch. "Time passes differently for us. But I grow weary of this place. Will you help me, James Harrison?" The way she said his name sent a shiver down his spine, not entirely unpleasant, but unsettling nonetheless. You know my name, but I don't know anything about you or your species. Then let us remedy that, Zara said, gesturing toward the station's engineering section. My ship is docked in the secondary bay. While we work on repairs, we can get to know each other better. James followed her through the station's corridors, watching as her form seemed to shift and flow with each movement. He told himself he was following for the potential salvage value, for the scientific discovery of contact with a new species. But deep down, he knew there was something more drawing him forward, something primal and dangerous. As they walked, he noticed strange markings on the walls, unlike anything in standard human engineering. They seemed to pulse faintly in Zara's presence, though he couldn't be sure if it was a trick of the light or something more sinister. These markings, he began, but Zara cut him off with a gesture. Remnants of my attempts to repair my ship's systems, she said quickly. My technology interfaces differently with human structures. They reached the secondary bay, and James saw her ship for the first time. It was beautiful in an alien way, all curved lines and surfaces that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. But something about it triggered a warning in his mind, a pattern in its design that spoke of predatory intent. Beautiful, isn't it? Zara asked, watching his reaction closely. Like nothing your species has ever created. That's one word for it, James replied, studying the ship's unusual configuration. What exactly needs repairing? The core matrix requires realignment, she said, moving closer to him. But perhaps we should rest first. You've had a long journey, and I've waited so long for company. James felt her presence behind him, a warmth that seemed to radiate through his suit. He turned to face her, finding himself caught in those nebula-deep eyes. For a moment, he thought he saw something else in their depths, something ancient and hungry. I prefer to work first, he said, taking a step back. Professional habit. Zara's smile widened slightly, showing those two sharp teeth again. Of course. Humans and their dedication to duty. Very well, James Harrison. Let us begin our work together. I have a feeling this will be the start of a very interesting relationship. As James followed her into the ship, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into something far more complex than a simple repair job. But by then, the airlock had sealed behind them with a final, decisive click. The interior of Zara's ship defied human engineering principles. Surfaces that appeared solid became translucent at her touch, while corridors seemed to shift and reshape themselves as they walked. James found himself fighting vertigo as his mind struggled to process the alien geometry. Your technology, he said, running a scanner over a pulsing wall panel, I've never seen anything like it. It's almost organic. Zara traced her fingers along the wall, leaving trails of bioluminescence in their wake. My people believe technology should adapt to life, not the other way around. Our ships are grown, not built. James noticed how the ship responded to her presence, like a living thing reacting to its master's touch. But there was something else, subtle marks along the corridors that looked suspiciously like claw marks, too large to have been made by any human. The core matrix is this way, Zara said, leading him deeper into the ship. Her movements were hypnotic, each step perfectly calculated. James found himself watching her more than their surroundings, though his training screamed at him to stay alert. They entered what appeared to be the engine room, though it bore little resemblance to any he'd seen before. A crystalline structure pulsed at its center, casting rainbow refractions across the chamber's curved walls. This is your core? James asked, approaching the crystal cautiously. His scanner went haywire as he got closer, displaying impossible energy readings. The heart of my ship, Zara confirmed, watching him intently. It requires specific energy to function properly. Energy I haven't been able to provide alone. James frowned at his readings. These power signatures are unlike anything in our databases. How do you usually fuel it? Zara moved closer, her presence making the air feel charged with static electricity. My species draws energy from biological sources. Compatibility is rare, but when found, the connection is intense. Something in her tone made James look up from his scanner. Her eyes had changed, pupils dilating until they resembled black holes rimmed with purple fire. For a moment, he thought he saw other faces reflected in their depths, human faces, twisted in expressions he couldn't quite read. I should check the station's logs, he said suddenly, taking a step back. Might be something useful about the power systems they used here. The logs were corrupted during the evacuation, Zara said smoothly, but James was already moving toward the exit. James, wait. Don't you feel it? The connection between us? He did feel it, a pull that went beyond physical attraction, like gravity drawing him into her orbit. But with that pull came a growing sense of danger, primal as a mouse sensing a snake. The ship's corridors seemed different on his way back, longer and more maze-like. He found himself taking wrong turns, ending up in chambers he hadn't seen before. In one, he discovered what looked like a collection of personal effects, watches, rings, photographs, all human in origin. You're asking the wrong questions, James, Zara's voice echoed through the ship. He couldn't tell if she was speaking through some communication system or directly into his mind. You're so focused on the technical puzzles that you're missing the real mystery. And what's that? He asked, picking up a worn leather wallet. Inside, he found an ID card for Dr. Thomas Reed, one of Omega-7's missing researchers. Why you're really here? Why, out of all the passing ships, you were the one who heard my call. Her voice was closer now, just around the corner. There's a reason my kind seeks out humans like you. The lonely ones, the curious ones, the ones who push beyond safe boundaries. James backed away from the collection of artifacts, his hand finding his plasma cutter again. How many others have there been? Not as many as you might think. Finding the right match is crucial. Compatibility isn't just about biology, it's about spirit, about that spark of defiance that makes humans so fascinating. He turned to find her blocking his path, her form seeming larger somehow, more predatory. The ship's walls pulsed in sync with her movements, and James realized with growing horror that the vessel wasn't just organic, it was an extension of her. The others, he managed, the missing researchers. Were they compatible? Zara's smile showed too many teeth. Some were. Others proved disappointing. But you, James, you're different. I knew it from the moment I sensed your ship approaching. You have what I need. And what's that? The strength to survive the joining. She reached for him with hands that were no longer entirely human. The others were too fragile, too easily broken by the process. But you have steel in your soul. You could be the one to help me complete the cycle. James fired his plasma cutter at the ceiling, causing a cascade of sparks. In the chaos, he bolted past her, running through corridors that seemed to actively resist his escape. Behind him, he heard something moving, something much larger than the humanoid form Zara had presented. He reached the airlock just as the ship's internal lights shifted to a deep, arterial red. As he cycled through the decompression sequence, Zara's voice filled his mind one last time. Run if you must, James Harrison. It makes the hunt more exciting. But remember, you came to me. Some part of you wanted this. And that part will bring you back. The airlock opened and James launched himself toward the station proper, not stopping until he reached his own ship. As he initiated emergency departure procedures, he caught a glimpse of something massive moving behind the station's windows, a shape that defied description, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. His ship broke free from the station's docking clamps, but James knew this wasn't over. The pull he felt toward Zara hadn't diminished with distance. If anything, it had grown stronger. As he plotted a course away from Omega-7, his hand trembled over the navigation controls. Run or return. Survival or surrender. The choice should have been simple, but as the station receded into the darkness of space, James wasn't sure which option he was really choosing. The Starweaver's engines strained as James pushed them beyond recommended limits, but the distance he'd gained from Omega-7 brought no relief. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Zara's otherworldly gaze, felt the magnetic pull of her presence. Sleep became impossible, filled with dreams of crystalline corridors and shadowy forms that defied physics. After 3 days of running, he finally accepted that distance alone wouldn't break whatever connection had formed between them. He needed answers. The ship's computer hummed as he dug through restricted databases, searching for any mention of similar encounters. Display all cases of unexplained disappearances in this sector over the past decade, he commanded, his voice rough from lack of sleep. The results made his blood run cold. Dozens of incidents, all following a pattern he'd been too blind to see before. Solo pilots, research teams, salvage operators, all drawn to mysterious distress signals. All vanished without a trace. A message flashed across his screen, breaking his concentration. Unknown sender, but he knew who it was before opening it. The longer you run, the stronger it becomes, Zara's words scrolled across his display. The bond cannot be broken, only completed. Return to me, James. Let me show you what you're truly capable of becoming. His hand hovered over the delete button, but he found himself typing back instead. What happened to the others? The response came instantly, they were stepping stones. Evolution requires sacrifice. But you could be different. You could be the one who survives the transformation. James pushed away from the console, running his hands through his hair in frustration. The worst part was the temptation, the part of him that wanted to turn the ship around, to embrace whatever metamorphosis Zara offered. He'd always sought the unknown, pushed boundaries. Wasn't this just the ultimate frontier? A proximity alarm jolted him from his thoughts. Something was approaching, fast. The radar showed nothing, but he felt it, a presence vast as a solar storm, hungry as a black hole. I told you running would make it more exciting, Zara's voice purred through his ship's speakers. But the hunt cannot last forever. Choose, James. Face me as an equal, or become prey like the others. The ship's systems began failing one by one, each shutdown accompanied by a pulse of bioluminescence that reminded him of Zara's ship. She'd infected his systems somehow, turning his own vessel against him. With propulsion failing, James had moments to make his decision. The escape pod would give him one last chance to flee, to alert authorities and potentially save future victims. But even as he reached for the launch controls, he knew he couldn't run anymore. Computer, reverse course, he commanded. Take us back to Omega-7. The systems restored immediately, responding to his choice. As the ship turned, he began preparations of his own. If Zara wanted a hunt, he'd give her one, but on his terms. Hours later, the Starweaver docked once more with Omega-7. The station seemed different now, its metal skeleton humming with organic energy. Or perhaps he was the one who had changed, become more attuned to things he couldn't have perceived before. Welcome back, Zara's voice echoed through the station as he stepped out of his ship. She emerged from the shadows, her form shifting between human and something far more ancient. Have you accepted your destiny? James faced her, shoulders straight. I accept nothing blindly. You want me? Prove I'm different from the others. Show me everything, no more deceptions. Her smile was predatory but pleased. Brave. This is why you're special, James. The others begged, ran, or surrendered. You challenge. The station's walls began to pulse with that same bioluminescent energy, and James watched in fascination as they transformed, becoming more like the interior of Zara's ship. The metamorphosis spread through the corridors like a wave of evolution made visible. My species, Zara began, her form growing larger, more abstract. We are architects of evolution. We seek out species with potential and guide them toward transcendence. But the process requires compatibility, strength, will. And the failures? James asked, standing his ground as she towered over him. The ones who weren't compatible? Tendrils of light reached for him as she moved closer. Their energy feeds the transformation of others. Nothing is wasted. But you could be so much more. James felt the energy trying to seep into him, calling to something in his DNA that remembered older, stranger forms of life. Part of him wanted to embrace it, to let go of human limitations and evolve into something beyond comprehension. But another part, the part that had helped him survive 15 years in deep space, remembered the collection of personal effects in Zara's ship. Each item had belonged to someone who'd thought they were special enough to survive. "You're right," he said, stepping closer to her metamorphosing form. "I am different from the others. I'm the one who came prepared." He pulled out a device he'd modified during his return journey, a resonance disruptor calibrated to the exact frequency of her ship's core matrix. The look of surprise on her ever-shifting face was almost human. "Impossible," she hissed, her form fluctuating violently. "You couldn't have." 15 years of salvage work, he cut her off, finger on the trigger. "You learn to adapt technology quickly. Isn't that what evolution's all about?" The hunt was on, but this time, the roles were reversed, and the station itself would become their battlefield. The resonance disruptor pulsed in James's hand as he moved through Omega-7's transforming corridors. Each blast sent waves of interference through the organic matter that now coated the station's walls, making them recoil and writhe. Behind him, Zara's presence loomed like an approaching storm, her form continuously shifting between humanoid and something far more primordial. "Clever little human," her voice resonated through the station's structure. "But do you truly understand what you're fighting against? What you're fighting for?" James ducked into a side chamber as a wave of bioluminescent energy swept past. "I understand enough. You're a parasite, using human potential as fuel for your own evolution." Her laugh echoed from multiple directions. "Parasite? We are catalysts, James. For millennia, we have guided species toward their ultimate forms. Some survive the process, becoming something greater. Others provide energy for future attempts. The chamber he'd entered was once a research lab, now half consumed by organic growth. Display screens still flickered with data, records of the station's original experiments. As James scanned them, his eyes widened. "They knew about you," he realized. "The research team. They were studying your species." "Very good." Zara's voice held a note of approval. "They detected our presence in deep space, thought they could control and study us." Such delicious irony when they became the subjects of their own research. James accessed more files, his free hand flying over the keyboard. "But they learned something, didn't they? Something that scared them enough to abandon the station." The organic matter around him pulsed faster, agitated. "They learned that evolution cannot be controlled, only embraced or rejected. The weak fled. The strong, transcended. Is that what you call it?" James pulled up security footage showing the final days before evacuation. "Because this looks more like predation than transcendence." The footage showed researchers undergoing horrific transformations, their bodies and minds warped by contact with Zara's species. But one sequence caught his attention, a failed attempt at transformation that had damaged both the human subject and the alien catalyst. "You're not invulnerable," he said, backing toward the door. "Your kind can be hurt during the bonding process. That's why you need compatible subjects, to protect yourself during the transformation." Zara's form materialized in the doorway, still shifting but more focused now. "And that's precisely why you're perfect, James. Your mind understands adaptation, embraces change. Together, we could achieve what none before us have managed. A true symbiosis? He raised the disruptor. Instead of you simply consuming me, I offer evolution, advancement beyond anything your species could achieve alone. She moved closer, her form resolving into something almost human again. Look into your heart, James. Haven't you always wanted to be more than what you are? To break free of human limitations? The pull between them intensified, and James felt that familiar vertigo, the sensation of his consciousness expanding towards something vast and ancient. For a moment, he glimpsed what she offered: power beyond imagination, knowledge that spanned galaxies, immortality through endless transformation. But in that same glimpse, he saw the truth behind her words. The evolution she offered wasn't symbiosis, it was absorption. His consciousness would become part of her collective memory, another voice in the choir of consumed souls that echoed through her being. You're right, he said, lowering the disruptor slightly. I do want to evolve. To become something more. He took a step toward her. But evolution isn't about consuming or being consumed. It's about adaptation. Quick as thought, he spun and fired the disruptor at the lab's power core, which he'd quietly overloaded while accessing the files. The resulting explosion of energy caught both of them in its wave. Zara screamed, her form destabilizing as the conflicting energies tore through the chamber. The organic matter coating the station walls began to rupture, releasing stored energy from all her previous victims. James felt the blast tear through him as well, but instead of fighting it, he embraced the change it triggered. The genetic potential Zara had sensed in him responded to the energy in unexpected ways. He began to transform, but not as she had intended. As alarms blared through the dying station, two beings faced each other in the chaos, neither fully human nor fully alien, both forever changed by their encounter. The hunt wasn't over, but its nature had fundamentally changed. The station shuddered around them, and the final confrontation loomed, one that would determine not just their fates, but perhaps the future of both their species. Omega-7's emergency systems wailed as the station began to tear itself apart. In the chaos of the lab, two beings regarded each other through newly evolved senses. James's transformation had stabilized into something unprecedented, neither human nor alien, but a genuine hybrid of both. His consciousness expanded beyond physical limits while maintaining its human core, like a star finding balance between gravity and fusion. Impossible, Zara's voice resonated through multiple dimensions of space. Her form had reverted to its true state, a shifting matrix of energy and matter that bent light and reality around it. No human has ever achieved true evolution. James finished, his voice carrying new harmonics that made the station's metal bones vibrate. That's because you never gave them the chance. You were so focused on consumption that you missed the real potential of adaptation. The station groaned as more systems failed. The organic matter coating the walls began to decay, releasing the stored energy of countless victims. Their memories flooded through James's expanded consciousness, researchers, pilots, explorers, all consumed in Zara's endless hunt for perfection. You don't understand what you've done. Zara moved closer, her form rippling with both fury and fascination. This transformation is unstable. You'll tear yourself apart. Maybe, James acknowledged, feeling the tremendous energies surging through his metamorphosed form. But I understand something you don't. Evolution isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming better adapted to survive. He reached out with his new senses, touching the station's dying systems. Through his hybrid nature, he could interface with both the mechanical and organic components, understanding them in ways neither human nor alien could alone. The station's core will breach in 10 minutes, he said. When it does, the release of energy will destroy everything here. Including us, if we stay. Then join me. Zara's form shifted closer, tendrils of energy reaching for him. Together, we could be something unprecedented. Your adaptation, my power, we could reshape galaxies. For a moment, James felt the full weight of her offer. He saw visions of what they could become together, beings of pure energy and infinite potential, transcending the boundaries of flesh and consciousness. The loneliness that had driven him to deep space could end forever. But in that same moment, he felt the echoes of her previous victims, their individuality dissolved into her collective consciousness. What she offered wasn't partnership, but a more sophisticated form of consumption. You still don't understand, he said, his transformed body pulsing with accumulated energy. Real evolution, real growth, comes from choice. From maintaining who you are while becoming something more. The station shuddered violently. In the distance, the core began its final countdown to breach. Choice. Zara's form expanded, becoming more predatory. Then choose now. Join me or die here. James smiled, his expression carrying through even his altered form. Those aren't the only options. That's what you never understood about humans. We create our own choices. With his hybrid consciousness, he reached into the station systems one last time. Emergency protocols responded to his command, both mechanical and organic. Blast doors slammed shut, containment fields activated, and power rerouted through new configurations. What are you doing? Zara's voice held a note of uncertainty for the first time. Creating a third option. The station's core breach can be directed. The energy has to go somewhere. He paused, letting her understand. Or to someone. Zara recoiled as she grasped his plan. You'll channel the breach through yourself? The energy will destroy you. Maybe. Or maybe I'll adapt again. That's the beauty of true evolution, you never know what's possible until you try. The core reached critical levels. James felt the energy building, a tsunami of power preparing to break. But instead of fighting it, he opened himself to it, becoming a conduit for forces that could reshape matter itself. Last chance, he told Zara, even as his form began to blaze with contained power. Stop hunting. Stop consuming. Learn to adapt and grow instead. For a moment that stretched across dimensions, their transformed beings regarded each other. Predator and prey, hunter and hunted, both changed by their encounter in ways neither had expected. Then the core breached, and reality itself seemed to tear open. The explosion should have destroyed the station and everything in it. Instead, the energy flowed through James's hybrid form in a controlled cascade, transforming him further but never breaking his essential self. The power burned away what remained of his physical form, replacing it with something that existed across multiple planes of reality. When the energy storm cleared, James found himself changed once again. He had become something unprecedented, a bridge between human and alien, flesh and energy, individual and infinite. Beside him, Zara hovered in her true form, her predatory nature held in check by something new, respect. What happens now? She asked, her voice carrying notes of both wonder and wariness. James touched the void of space with his new senses, feeling the infinite possibilities that stretched before them. Now we both have a choice. Continue as we were, or evolve into something neither of us expected. And if I choose to hunt again? Then I'll be there to stop you. Someone has to protect those who aren't ready to evolve. The ruins of Omega-7 drifted behind them, a monument to the price of forced evolution. But ahead lay the vast expanse of space, filled with potential for growth, change, and genuine transformation. Two beings, one born of ancient hunger, one forged in human determination, faced that infinite darkness together. Not as hunter and prey, not as consumer and consumed, but as examples of what evolution could truly achieve when choice and adaptation worked in harmony. The hunt was over. The real journey was just beginning.